Imagine you're just walking around the street. Your phone is in your pocket, right?
Right.
It hasn't buzzed. You haven't received a weird text message. You haven't opened a sketchy email. And you certainly haven't, like, clicked on any unverified links.
You are practicing perfect digital hygiene.
Exactly. Perfect hygiene. And yet, simply because your phone is turned on and connected to a cellular network, someone thousands of miles away is watching a red dot move across a map,
Oh, yeah.
tracking your exact physical location in real time.
It's terrifying. I mean, it completely shatters the fundamental premise of modern cybersecurity training.
Right.
We spent 2 decades teaching people that, they are the perimeter, that if they just don't click the bad link, they remain safe inside their digital fortress.
Yeah, the whole don't talk to strangers, but for the internet.
Exactly.
Right.
But the reality of the threat landscape has bypassed the user entirely. The grid itself has become the attack vector.
Okay, let's unpack this, because today we're going to explore a piece of source material that completely dismantles that illusion of safety we all rely on.
It really does.
We are taking a deep dive inside a leaked, raw audio recording from a private, underground online chat room. It's basically a digital speakeasy where the people who actually build these invisible weapons are just casually talking shop.
And the file is literally titled Resumen de la Semana, complete with a little smiley face emoji.
Right. Summary of the week with a smiley face.
The casualness of that title, especially when you juxtapose it against the gravity of what they actually discuss, is just jarring.
It's wild.
This recording gives us this rare, completely unvarnished window into the highest tiers of the global cybersecurity underground. We're listening to a group of operators who go by names like Mr. Ban, Julio, Mel, Haxus, and Elliot.
And I want to make it clear to you listening right now, this isn't a Hollywood movie script.
No, not all.
This isn't a scene with a guy in a black hoodie typing furiously while green matrix code rains down his monitor. This is literally just a mundane Tuesday for these guys.
Just another day at the office.
Over the course of this deep dive, we're going to explore zero-click geolocation tools, totally undetectable malware frameworks that bypass the most expensive corporate security on Earth.
The big stuff.
Yeah. And the terrifying real-world intersection where all this code meets cartel violence, massive government corruption, and, like, the unwritten ethical codes of the hacker underground.
We really have to start with the sheer scale of the automated threats they discuss in the first few minutes, though.
Oh, the North Korea thing.
Yes. So, one of the speakers, Mel, he casually apologizes to the group for being busy all week. And his excuse: he's been putting out fires on his servers because North Korean state-sponsored hackers introduced a remote access Trojan RAT into an open-source library called Axios.
I want to stop right there, because Axios isn't some obscure, tiny piece of software.
Not at all.
It's a foundational building block. It's used by millions of developers to handle web requests. To put this in perspective for you, think of the Axios library like a standardized type of industrial flour used by thousands and thousands of bakeries worldwide.
I love that analogy.
Right, because if a bad actor wants to poison 1 million people, they don't waste time trying to break into 1 million different bakeries.
They don't try to sneak past 1 million security guards.
Exactly. They just infiltrate the flour mill. They poison the flour at the source. And because the bakery's supply trucks are basically automated, they blindly accept the delivery, and suddenly every cake baked is toxic.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the mechanism of a supply chain attack. I mean, the modern internet is built on these dependency trees.
Right.
A developer building an app doesn't write every single line of code from scratch.
Yeah.
They pull in pre-built libraries, like Axios, to handle standard functions.
Because why reinvent the wheel?
Exactly. And these libraries are managed by systems called Node Package Managers, or NPMs. So when a developer types a command to update their app, the package manager just automatically reaches out to the repository and pulls the latest version of Axios.
But wait, how does North Korea actually get their malicious code into an open source project? I mean, isn't it vetted by thousands of legitimate developers? Doesn't the open source community audit these updates?
Well, in theory, yes.
Yeah.
But in practice, the ecosystem relies heavily on trust and, honestly, maintainer burnout. North Korean operators, who are often working under the Lazarus Group umbrella, they don't necessarily hack the repository's servers directly.
They use social engineering.
Precisely. They identify a stressed, unpaid volunteer maintainer of an open source project. And they pose as helpful developers. They submit legitimate, highly useful code fixes for months just to build a reputation.
Oh, wow. So they put in the actual work first.
They do. And once they are granted what's called commit access, which is the ability to push updates directly to the main code branch, they slip in a heavily obfuscated payload.
So they basically play the long game. They become trusted insiders. And Mel mentions they had to basically shut down their automated package managers just to stop their servers from pulling down this North Korean malware.
Which really highlights the economic asymmetry of this kind of warfare. I mean, North Korea operates under crushing international sanctions, right?
Yeah, of course.
Maintaining massive server infrastructure to launch brute force attacks against heavily defended Western banks, that is incredibly resource intensive.
Right, it costs a fortune.
But infiltrating a free open source library, the operational cost is basically just the time it takes to write a few emails and submit some code.
That's chilling.
The yield, however, is access to potentially millions of corporate networks that blindly trust that Axios update. It's a highly efficient, devastatingly quiet method of wealth and data extraction.
And it's wild how calmly Mel discusses patching against a literal nation-state intelligence agency. But, the conversation shifts from global supply chains to a tool that is hyper-targeted. And honestly, this part made the hair on the back of my neck stand up.
The geolocation tool.
Yeah. They start discussing a developer in their circle named Haxus. And Haxus has apparently built a custom geolocation tool.
Which is fascinating because geolocation tracking is usually highly dependent on user error.
Right.
The standard methodology requires the target to interact with a payload. You receive a text message claiming your package delivery failed. You click the embedded link. That link resolves to an IP address logging service, and the attacker captures your general location based on your network connection.
But according to the audio, Haxus' tool operates on a completely different paradigm.
Yeah.
He doesn't need you to click a link. He doesn't need to send you a phishing email or a WhatsApp message.
Yeah.
He requires only a 10-digit phone number. You punch the number into his interface, and it pings the target's exact geographic coordinates. I really have to push back here, though. How is that physically possible?
It sounds like magic, Ray.
Yeah. If I have a modern smartphone, fully updated, with no malicious apps installed, how can a raw phone number leak my GPS data?
So we have to look at the underlying architecture of global telecommunications, specifically the signaling protocols that route calls and texts. While the audio doesn't explicitly name the protocol, tools matching this exact description almost universally exploit SS7, or Signaling System 7,
Okay.
or its newer 4G and 5G equivalent, which is called Diameter. SS7 is a set of telephony signaling protocols developed back in 1975. It's literally the system that allows a cell tower in New York to connect a call to a cell tower in Tokyo.
So it's basically the back-end infrastructure that the phone companies use to talk to each other.
Exactly. And the critical flaw in SS7 is that it operates on absolute inherent trust.
Trust again.
Always trust.
Yeah.
If a telecom network receives a routing request from another network, it just assumes the request is legitimate. So an attacker with access to the SS7 network, which they often purchase illicitly from corrupt telecom operators in developing nations, they can send a specific message called a provide subscriber info request to the target's home network.
And the home network just hands over the data, like no questions asked.
It hands over the identification of the exact cell tower the target's phone is currently communicating with, along with a specific sector of the antenna.
Wow.
Yeah. By triangulating that data, the attacker gets a highly precise geographic location. The target's phone never rings, no text message appears. The phone's operating system doesn't register an attack at all because this isn't an attack on the phone itself.
Right, it's an attack on the network.
It's an abuse of the global infrastructure the phone relies on to function.
That fundamentally shifts the entire threat model. The vulnerability isn't in my device, it's literally in the air around it.
Yeah.
And they don't just talk about this as some theoretical concept.
No, they've used it.
Yeah. Julio shares a real-world anecdote on the recording to prove its efficacy. He mentions an influencer who was dealing with a severe extortion situation. The extortionist was using burner numbers, sending threats, creating this highly volatile environment.
And Haxus stepped in to demonstrate his architecture.
Right. According to Julio, Haxus took the extortionist's 10-digit phone number, ran it through his system, and within 5 minutes, he handed over the exact physical coordinates of the extortionist.
Incredible.
The influencer was completely stunned. And honestly, listening to this, I am too. It means the old advice of don't click suspicious links is functionally obsolete against an advanced adversary.
It really is.
If someone with Haxus tool wants to find you and they have your number, you are visible. You don't have to make a mistake. You just have to exist on the grid.
And the group's reaction to this is incredibly telling.
Yeah.
There is absolutely no moral panic.
None.
They analyze it strictly as a feat of engineering. They immediately start discussing monetization strategies like integrating payment APIs so buyers can purchase credits to run queries through Haxus tool.
Right, just turning it into a subscription service.
Exactly. In their ecosystem, a tool's value is derived entirely from its power and its reliability, totally devoid of its potential for misuse.
Which brings us right to the core of this underground economy. I mean, Haxus tool is about locating a physical body in the real world. But the recording soon dives deep into tools designed to take total, invisible control of a digital environment.
And the central figure here is the guy who goes by Mr. Ban.
Yeah, Mr. Ban.
Mr. Ban presents as this highly articulate, deeply pragmatic individual. He commands immediate respect in that room. He is the principal architect of a piece of proprietary malware he calls Flicklary R7.
And Mr. Ban talks about R7 with the pride of a craftsman. He explains that while the final output is a standard executable file, its delivery mechanisms are incredibly versatile.
Very adaptable.
He talks about hiding the payload in LNK shortcut files, embedding it in HTA scripts, or wrapping it in innocuous-looking Word documents and PDFs. But here's what I don't understand, and maybe you can clear this up.
Sure.
He claims R7 is completely undetectable. He even issues this challenge, saying he is going to buy a $100 Falcon Enterprise license from CrowdStrike, which is, top-tier enterprise-grade security used by massive international banks.
The best of the best.
Right. He buys it just to record a video proving R7 can bypass it. But CrowdStrike doesn't just look at file signatures. It uses behavioral AI.
Right. It watches what the file does.
Exactly. So even if R7 is obfuscated when it lands on the hard drive, wouldn't the AI catch it the second it executes and tries to establish a connection back to Mr. Ban's servers?
So that is the crucial distinction between legacy antivirus and modern XDR extended detection and response platforms like CrowdStrike.
Okay.
Legacy systems look for known bad code, kind of like a bouncer checking a watch list at the door. Modern XDR watches what the program actually does once it's inside.
Right.
If Microsoft Word suddenly opens a command prompt and tries to inject code into a system process, the XDR terminates it immediately. To bypass this, Mr. Ban's R7 almost certainly utilizes what we call living off the land techniques combined with advanced memory manipulation.
Living off the land, meaning using tools that are already installed on the computer.
Precisely. Instead of bringing a malicious tool onto the system, R7 uses native, trusted Windows administrative tools.
Like what?
Things like PowerShell or Windows management instrumentation to carry out its objectives. Furthermore, high-end malware executes entirely in the system's volatile memory, or RAM.
Ah, so it never touches the hard drive.
Exactly. It never writes its malicious components to the hard drive where the XDR can easily scan them. It might also use techniques like API unhooking.
What's that?
It's essentially blinding the XDR sensors by intercepting the telemetry before it ever reaches the security software's behavioral engine.
Wow.
Yeah, Mr. Ban's confidence in bypassing CrowdStrike suggests he has found a reliable way to basically blind the bouncer before walking through the front door.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the group brings up a comparison that sets the scale for what Mr. Ban has built. They start comparing his R7 malware to Pegasus.
That's a huge claim.
It is. For context for you listening, Pegasus is the multi-million-dollar spyware developed by the NSO group in Israel. It is basically the apex predator of the digital world. It's sold exclusively to nation-states and intelligence agencies to monitor terrorists, journalists, and political dissidents.
Right.
Comparing a tool from an underground forum to Pegasus is massive.
And Mr. Ban's reaction to the Pegasus comparison provides an absolute masterclass in the economics of cyber weaponry. He doesn't puff out his chest. He actually corrects them.
Yeah, he calls them children who live in movies.
Exactly. He strips away all the mystique of Pegasus and breaks it down to pure market economics.
Right. He says the only difference between his R7 software and Pegasus is a zero-day exploit.
And just to clarify, a zero-day exploit is a vulnerability in a system like Apple's iOS or Google's Android that the vendor is completely unaware of.
They've had 0 days to fix it.
Exactly. They have had 0 days to write a patch. Pegasus commands its exorbitant price tag not because its monitoring capabilities are unique, but because it is paired with zero-click, zero-day delivery chains.
Right.
An intelligence agency pays millions to the NSO group because NSO possesses an exploit that allows them to silently infect a fully updated iPhone just by sending an invisible iMessage.
So Mr. Ben is basically arguing that once the malware is actually through the front door, The post-exploitation capabilities are practically identical.
Yes.
Whether it's a multi-million-dollar nation-state weapon or a license of R7 bought on the dark web, they both steal the passwords, they both activate the microphone, they both scrape the encrypted messages.
The functions are exactly the same.
The millions of dollars governments are spending isn't for the surveillance software itself. They are paying exclusively for the lockpick.
The payload is a commodity at this point. The invisible entry vector is the premium asset. If you remove the multi-million-dollar Apple exploit from Pegasus, you are left with a remote access Trojan that functions fundamentally the same as Mr. Band's R7. It's a profound democratization of offensive capability.
Which naturally places Mr. Ban in the position of an unregulated digital arms dealer. And he operates with a very specific set of rules to manage his own liability.
Oh, he's very careful.
Yeah, he outright refuses to sell the source code of R7. He doesn't want people modifying it or mass distributing it. He sells limited licenses. Buyers don't even get to host the infrastructure themselves. They log into a web interface that Mr. Ban controls, authenticating with rotating daily tokens.
It's basically a SaaS model, software as a service.
Right.
But applied to cyber espionage.
Exactly.
And by maintaining that central infrastructure, Mr. Ban retains an immense amount of intelligence. I mean, he openly admits to the group that through his control panel, he can see every single target his clients infect.
He watches the global deployment of his weapon in real time.
Yeah.
And he casually drops the fact that he sees his software actively being used to target politicians and journalists in Mexico. He knows exactly who is being compromised and by whom.
This introduces a fascinating ethical paradox. Mr. Ban operates under a doctrine of absolute non-intervention. His philosophy is essentially, I provide the architecture. The client assumes the moral and legal responsibility for the target.
Right. Don't blame the gun manufacturer.
Exactly. Unless a client routes their attack directly through his personal servers, which draws unwanted attention to his infrastructure, he simply watches. He views himself strictly as a neutral vendor in an unregulated market.
But the audio reveals that his cold, pragmatic exterior definitely has cracks. There's this moment where he confesses to violating his own strict operational security rules due to pure human emotion.
The calentura moment.
Yes. He talks about a time he got into a heated political disagreement regarding the Mexican government. He specifically mentions his frustration with a political figure named Claudia. And in a moment of what he calls calentura, like a hot-headed, impulsive rage, he threw his neutrality straight out the window.
He took his premium, highly restricted R7 malware and handed out 10 free licenses to a group of elite operators.
And he didn't do this for profit.
No. He did it with the explicit, spoken intent of weaponizing those operators to attack the government infrastructure he was angry at.
He basically armed a digital militia for free, just to cause chaos for an administration he disliked. It's such a vital detail because it destroys the myth of the sterile, purely logical hacker.
Completely.
Behind the IP routing, behind the cryptographic tokens and the zero-day economics, there is a human being with a temper, a political bias, and an ego. These devastating tools are subject to the same volatile human flaws as anything else.
And when you inject human volatility into tools capable of extracting state secrets and tracking physical locations, the consequences inevitably spill out of the digital realm. They manifest as physical violence.
Which brings us to the most harrowing segment of this recording. The transition from bits and bytes to flesh and blood is abrupt and terrifying. We shift from Mr. Ban's theoretical malware architecture to a deeply personal, brutal account from Julio.
Yeah, Julio's story is heavy.
It is. Now, before we explore Julio's story, I need to set a clear boundary for you listening. Julio makes sweeping, highly specific allegations regarding the Mexican government, major political figures, and intelligence agencies.
Very specific names.
Yes. We are here to analyze the source material and report the claims made within this audio space. We are not endorsing these viewpoints, we are not validating the factual accuracy of his political claims, and we are absolutely not taking a political side.
Exactly.
Our objective is simply to understand the reality these individuals believe they are operating within.
That context is absolutely essential. Because the reality Julio describes is a waking nightmare.
It really is.
He recounts a period in his life where his digital operations intercepted information that crossed the wrong powerful people. And he isn't talking about getting a cease and desist letter in the mail.
No.
He describes being physically abducted. He details being beaten by a cartel hit squad consisting of 30 armed men carrying Cuernos de Chivo AK-47s.
And he states he was held captive in a military hotel for 2 months. 2 months.
Yeah.
And the core thesis of Julio's argument, the worldview he projects to the rest of the chat room, is that the lines between the cartels and the state are practically non-existent.
He explicitly argues that the real narcos aren't just the visible cartel bosses hiding out in the mountains. They are the politicians and intelligence directors sitting in government offices.
Right, and he names specific actors to validate his standing in the underground. He claims that around 2009 or 2010, his activities led to him being personally interrogated by Guillermo Valdez Castellanos, the former director of CISEN, which is Mexico's primary civilian intelligence agency.
That's a huge claim.
Massive. He alleges he was brought into this interrogation by Rafael Gomez del Campo, whom he identifies as the brother-in-law of former President Felipe Calderón.
And the allegations don't stop at historical figures either.
No, they don't.
He references contemporary power players. He claims Omar Garcia Harfuch, a massive figure in Mexican security, is actively involved in purchasing hacked, illicit information and maintains ties with cartel factions.
He brings up Clara Brugada, too.
Right, a prominent politician. He alleges she sought to acquire hacked data to leverage against political rivals.
And then there's the truly horrific claim.
What about the rehab centers?
Yes. He makes a horrific claim that corrupt officials systematically released addicts from 116 rehabilitation centers, putting them back on the streets to sell drugs and generate illicit revenue for political campaigns.
It's incredibly dark. He also predicts geopolitical shifts, claiming that the U.S. ambassador to Guatemala, Juan Jose Rodriguez, is preparing what the group calls La Voladora, a massive, impending political reckoning targeting these corrupt networks.
Like a massive blowdown.
Exactly. Now, whether these statements represent verified intelligence, exaggerated rumors from the dark web, or the trauma-induced paranoia of a man who survived a brutal kidnapping, the physical danger Julio experiences is undeniably real.
Absolutely. It left me with a glaring question, though. How do you survive?
What do you mean?
I mean, if you are Julio and you possess digital evidence that could destroy the careers of politicians who have the physical means to send a 30-man hit squad to your house, how do you wake up every day and not get killed? How does a dead man's switch actually work in practice?
He works on the geopolitical doctrine of mutually assured destruction. Mr. Ban and Julio discuss this openly. The digital data they possess is their only armor. Julio explicitly states he has held on to damning evidence for 7 years without publishing it.
7 years. Why?
Because the moment you publish the data, you expend your leverage. If the corrupt official is already ruined in the press, they have absolutely no incentive to keep you alive. In fact, their only incentive at that point is revenge.
If you have them by the balls and they have you by the balls, don't let go. That's Mr. Ban's exact phrasing in the audio.
Yeah.
You secure the data in encrypted drops, you distribute the decryption keys to trusted associates with strict instructions to release them if you go missing, and then you make sure your enemies know the system is in place. You survive by ensuring your death would be professionally fatal to the people who want to kill you.
It is a razor-thin tightrope to walk, and it leads directly to an ongoing situation Mr. Ban reveals to the group. He's currently in the middle of negotiating a $150,000 payout.
Hush money.
Yes. Hush money. He intercepted a massive cache of data that he claims contains irrefutable evidence of pedophilia and extreme corruption linked to highly influential individuals.
And when he reveals this, Mel, the host of the audio space, immediately defaults to the superhero narrative.
Naturally.
Mel says they should take the data, dump it on the internet, dox the abusers live on a stream, and be the heroes who bring these monsters to justice. I mean, it's the exact plot of every vigilante hacker movie ever made.
But Mr. Ban rejects it instantly.
Instantly.
The pragmatism he applies to his malware, he applies to his own life. He tells Mel, I have a family. I have a wife, a child, a mother. He explains that if he plays the hero and releases this data, the individuals implicated have the wealth and power to completely eradicate his family.
So he is taking the $150,000 not necessarily out of greed, but because accepting the extortion payment is the contract that guarantees his family's safety?
Right. It's a transaction of survival.
He delivers a brutal reality check to the younger guys listening. He says, the real world isn't a movie. If you fight people with infinite power, you will lose everything. He is actively choosing to let abusers go free because the alternative is sacrificing his own blood.
It is a profoundly dark ethical compromise. It strips away any romanticized notion of the hacktivist fighting the good fight.
Yeah.
In the actual underground, survival almost always supersedes justice.
It is so heavy, the weight of the paranoia, the constant threat of violence, the moral compromises. You really feel the burden these guys carry.
You do.
Which made me wonder, what kind of mind actually thrives in this environment? Who builds the foundational logic that powers this entire shadowy ecosystem?
Well, that question leads to one of the most fascinating and honestly subversive segments of the recording.
Yeah, the story about Sebastian.
Exactly. The group starts discussing a figure named Sebastian Santos.
Mr. Band starts getting a little nostalgic. He admits that years ago, before he was the architect of R7, he was essentially a lazy adult coder.
Very lazy by his own admission.
Right. He came from a comfortable background, he didn't have much ambition, and he used to write simple Python scripts on his cell phone just because he couldn't be bothered to get out of bed and sit at a computer monitor.
He was a hobbyist, coasting on minimal effort. But his trajectory completely changed when he met a mentor. And the dynamic here is just incredible. The mentor who rebuilt this adult hacker's entire skill set was a 13-year-old boy.
A 13-year-old named Sebastian.
Yes.
Mr. Band describes how this kid looked at his lazy Python scripts and basically said, "No, you're doing this entirely wrong." Sebastian forced Mr. Band to actually learn database architecture. He forced him to learn Android Studio. He basically dragged him out of his comfort zone.
And Mr. Band makes a stunning admission here.
What's that?
He states that the core foundation of his current highly lucrative malware enterprise, the specific proprietary logic that allowed his Python payloads to achieve 100% undetectability against antivirus engines, was written and handed to him by 13-year-old Sebastian.
Wow.
The child literally handed the adult the keys to the kingdom.
Mr. Band speaks about Sebastian with pure reverence. He describes Sebastian as having mild autism, and he frames this neurodivergence as an overwhelming evolutionary advantage in their field.
That's a superpower.
Yeah. He says Sebastian's mind operates outside normal human metrics. He doesn't process information like we do. He sees the architecture of a system instantly. He grasps in 5 minutes what takes a normal senior developer weeks to understand.
It really highlights a known phenomenon in high-level cybersecurity and systems engineering. The ability to hyper-focus, to recognize complex patterns across completely disparate data sets, and to interact with pure logic devoid of social distraction is a massive asset.
Absolutely.
Sebastian isn't constrained by ego or the desire to posture in chat rooms like some of the others. His interaction with the machine is pure.
So hearing all this, I'm expecting the punchline to be that Sebastian is now some infamous cybercriminal mastermind running a dark web cartel, right?
Right, the typical villain origin story.
Yeah. But it's the exact opposite. Mr. Band gleefully shares that Sebastian, who is now in his 20s, has completely pivoted. He uses his savant-like understanding of systems and architecture to do visual design work for massive mainstream pop stars.
It's amazing.
He explicitly mentions that the kid who wrote the foundation for undetectable malware now designs concepts for Bad Bunny and Shakira.
The juxtaposition is almost poetic. He transitioned from architecting invisible digital threats to creating highly visible global art.
It's incredible.
Yet the core trait remains. Mr. Band notes that Sebastian absolutely refuses public credit. He doesn't maintain a portfolio website. He doesn't want Instagram followers. He makes his money, does the work he finds intellectually stimulating, and remains a ghost by choice.
It really paints a picture of a mind operating on a completely different frequency, and it naturally leads to a question that Mel actually asks on behalf of the listeners in the audio space. If someone wants to learn to do this, not the illegal stuff, but to achieve that level of technical mastery, where do you start?
The eternal question.
Yeah, like, do I need to go buy a $5,000 ThinkPad and install Kali Linux to be a real hacker?
And Mr. Band immediately debunks those hardware and OS myths that Hollywood has ingrained in us. He says the operating system is irrelevant.
Totally irrelevant.
Windows, macOS, Linux, they all have architectures. They all have vulnerabilities. In fact, Mr. Band notes he prefers using a Mac for his daily comfortable life, but he boots into Windows for his heavy development and testing, because that is the environment his targets use.
His advice is incredibly grounded. He says you don't start by downloading malware tools from GitHub. You start by learning pure logic. You have to understand how a computer thinks before you can trick it.
Exactly. He recommends starting with a highly readable language like Python to grasp the fundamentals of logical flow. But he stresses that to reach the elite tier, you must eventually move to low-level languages like Go, Rust, or C.
Because they're harder.
Because they're languages that force you to manually manage memory allocation. And memory is where the advanced exploits live.
Ah, I see. And he gives a blistering critique of the cybersecurity education industry, too. He warns the audience not to waste their money on expensive online boot camps.
Oh, he hates them.
He says these programs just package outdated videos from 2014 and sell the illusion of a shortcut. And I love the phrase he uses in Spanish for what it actually takes to learn this stuff. Horas nalga.
Hours on the buttocks.
Yes. You have to sit in the chair. You have to stare at a screen that is throwing errors at you for 10 hours straight. You have to read the dry 500-page technical documentation.
There is no Matrix-style upload to your brain.
No, it is an unglamorous, agonizing grind of trial and error.
It requires an almost pathological level of dedication. But here's the paradox of the hacker underground. You have individuals with the discipline to sit in a chair for 100 hours to reverse engineer a single piece of software.
Yeah.
And yet they are still human.
Yep.
Which means they still fall prey to petty drama, ego, and betrayal.
Which brings us to the final major theme of the recording: community, drama, and the illusion of anonymity. You would think a group of elite operators dealing with cartels and zero-day exploits wouldn't have time for internet beef.
You would think.
But a massive chunk of this audio is dedicated to complaining about a guy who goes by Hector Lopez, or HL.
HL serves as the perfect archetype of the dark web provocateur. He is a troll. He constantly attacks Mr. Ban, Julio, and their associates. He accuses them of faking their capabilities. He claims Mr. Ban's R7 malware is just script kiddie garbage generated by AI, and he deliberately tries to provoke them into public arguments.
And Julio, given his background, is furious.
Yeah.
He wants physical confrontation. He wants to track HL down and literally fight him.
Right.
But the group actually talks Julio down, and the consensus they reach demonstrates a highly sophisticated understanding of the modern attention economy.
They recognize that HL's currency is their reaction.
Yes.
By arguing with him, by bringing his name up on their streams to debunk his claims, they are legitimizing him. They are funneling their own audience toward his platform.
Julio eventually crystallizes the strategy. He says, essentially, in the attention economy, ignoring a provocateur is the ultimate punishment. They agree to a total freeze-out.
Block him, ignore his mentions, never speak his name on a stream.
They realize that starving a troll of oxygen is far more effective than trying to out-hack them.
It's a valuable lesson in operational security, but the group's drama extends far beyond trolls. It bleeds into the foundational currency of the dark web. Trust.
Right. The Cronus thing.
Yes. Julio vents to the room about a recent incident involving a group known as Cronus.
Julio explains that he vouched for Cronus. He recommended their services to a personal friend. And what did the Cronus group do? They immediately scammed Julio's friend out of $1,100 in cryptocurrency.
Ouch.
Julio is absolutely livid. He goes to the server admins to demand the money back, and they just ban him and block his messages.
Now, a layperson might hear that and think, well, it's crypto. They used a VPN. They're completely anonymous, so they got away with it. But Julio's reaction shatters the myth of absolute digital anonymity.
This was honestly the most chilling part of the recording for me.
Really?
Yeah. Julio issues a direct warning to the scammers. He points out that cryptographic anonymity is incredibly fragile when placed under the weight of human relationships. Consider that behind every avatar is a real person who has to vent to a friend, who gets drunk and brags, who shares a screen.
The human element is always the weakest link in OPSC.
Always. Julio tells them. You have a close inner circle of friends who know your real name, who know where your mother lives. When you build a habit of scamming people, you accumulate enemies who have capital.
Which is dangerous.
Julio literally says, eventually, one of the people you scammed will reach out to your closest friend and offer them $1,000 to dox your real identity.
And in an environment built entirely on betrayal, $1,000 is more than enough for someone in your inner circle to sell you out.
Your VPN won't save you when your roommate gives the cartel your address.
Exactly. Trust and reputation are the only true currencies in the underground. Burn them. And your technology cannot protect you.
It is a bleak, paranoid existence. The scams, the cartels, the constant threat of betrayal. But just as the atmosphere in the audio space reaches its darkest point, Mel asks Mr. Ban what he's working on next.
And the mood instantly pivots to pure, gleeful hacker enthusiasm.
Yes, Mr. Ban just lights up. He casually announces to the group that he just purchased a full-size physical ATM. He literally just has a bank ATM sitting in his house.
He explains the rationale, too. The vast majority of physical ATMs in his region, and indeed around the world, are not running specialized, impenetrable operating systems.
What are they running?
They are essentially metal boxes wrapped around standard computers running outdated versions of Windows 7 or Windows 10, utilizing a middleware standard called XFS to communicate with the cash dispenser.
And his plan isn't to go out and rob banks. He tells the group he is setting up a physical laboratory right in his home. He is going to write a custom module for his R7 malware, designed specifically to interface with the ATM's cash dispenser.
And he is going to record an educational video for the community showing exactly how to infect the machine and make it spit out cash.
It perfectly encapsulates the dual nature of this world. On one hand, he is negotiating $150,000 hush money payments regarding state corruption. On the other, he is building a science fair project in his living room purely for the intellectual thrill of breaking a complex system and sharing the knowledge with his peers.
I've got an ATM in my living room. Tune in next week to see me hack it. It's a completely surreal note to end the recording on.
It really is. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We have covered a massive amount of ground today.
We started by exposing the invisible threats that bypass our awareness entirely. We looked at how North Korea poisons the open source supply chains that build the internet.
And how a tool like Haxus exploits decades-old telecom infrastructure to track your physical location using nothing but a 10-digit phone number.
We dove into the economics of Mr. Band's undetectable R7 malware, discovering that the multi-million-dollar price tags of nation-state weapons like Pegasus aren't paying for the payload, they're paying for the zero-day lockpick.
We waded through the terrifying physical realities of Julio's world, where digital intelligence is weaponized as a shield against cartel hit squads and corrupt government intelligence agencies in a perpetual standoff of mutually assured destruction.
And we explored the incredibly complex human beings behind the code, the neurodivergent genius of a 13-year-old architect, the petty attention economy of dark web trolls, and the brutal truth that in a world obscured by cryptography, human trust remains the single most exploitable vulnerability.
Ultimately, analyzing this audio forces us to realize that the digital world is not a sterile environment of ones and zeros.
No, it is a living, highly volatile ecosystem. It is driven by human flaws, breathtaking ingenuity, and massive real-world stakes.
And that brings us right back to the beginning, that illusion of the digital fortress. You set up your two-factor authentication, use a password manager, you look for the little green padlock in your browser, and you feel safe.
Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over. We spend our lives treating digital security as a matter of personal responsibility. We believe that if we just follow the rules, we are protected.
Right.
But what if the greatest threat to your privacy isn't your own mistake?
Yeah.
What if the real threat is the invisible economy of exploits running quietly in the background? An economy that views corporate firewalls not as barriers, but as entertaining puzzles.
Yeah.
If an open source library you've never heard of can be poisoned to infiltrate your bank, or if it only takes a 10-digit phone number to pinpoint your exact physical location in 5 minutes,
Yeah.
how much of your life is truly yours to protect?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep looking behind the curtain, and most importantly, stay curious. We'll see you next time.